Hi, welcome back. Welcome back. You are watching On the Town with Tanya, and I'm your host. This week we have a special guest with us. He is a psychotherapist, the author of A Guilty Victim, Recovering Creativity After Trauma and Abuse, Making Sense of Emotions and Mental Health. He has written, so just to let you know, a background, A Guilty Victim is a case study written with full consent of the client, and it's out now, by the way. It tells the story of an English boy's recovery from grooming and abuse at a Catholic boarding school in Ireland in the 1970s. It is a contemporary account of psychotherapy with an adult survivor, written with the client's full consent and in his own words. And here to help us, please welcome Toby Ingham. Hi, welcome.
Hello, Tanya. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Sorry about that. Excuse me. So, what inspired you to write Guilty Victim, Recovering Creativity After Trauma and Abuse?
Well, I think the simple answer is the client inspired me to write it. So when we got to the end of the work, or towards the end of the work, he produced a series of pictures which explained his kind of timeline and his life. And he had an idea that these pictures, they should have text to go with them, and that I should write that text. And it took me about 7 years to work out how to write it and get it published. But that was the beginning of that idea.
Oh, great. Wow. Now, in your work as a psychotherapist, what patterns do you often see in how trauma and abuse impact creativity?
Well, I think trauma and abuse tend to have an effect. I mean, obviously, it's different for all of us. But I think if I was looking for some patterns, I'd say that trauma and abuse tend to have an effect of deregulating us emotionally. And that can come out in all kinds of ways. In the case involved here, in the book that became A Guilty Victim, any idea that my client, I've called him William in the book, it's not his real name, but any idea William had to do anything creative, be that go for a run, be that an art project, be that whatever, was met with a kind of internal prohibition that said, you cannot do those things. Good things are for other people, not for you. Okay. So trauma, I think, can significantly interfere with our capacity to live an authentic, kind of true self version of ourselves.
Now, can you explain the connection between emotions, mental health, and creativity from your perspective?
Well, I think looking at this from the trauma lens, so we're talking about emotions, mental health, creativity. That's right, isn't it? Yes. So I think that trauma interferes with ordinary emotional regulation, and that can have a lasting effect on our emotional stability. And in fact, I wrote another short book on emotional stability because of this, along the way of writing this book. And once our emotional stability is interfered with, I think we're a bit like people with bad ankles. We can live well, but we have to remember we've got a bad ankle. So if you run, for example, and you have a bad ankle, that's okay, as long as you remember you've got a bad ankle. And each day you look after it. But when you stop looking after it, that's when you can start having injuries, spraining it, further falls, all of those kinds of things.
Right.
So I think trauma has the effect of disrupting our relationship with our emotions, and that makes our mental health more complicated.
Right. So what about how do you help other clients navigate the guilt that often comes with being a victim of trauma and abuse?
Well, I think, if you like, a good starting point is to try and remember that it's not necessarily the case that there is something wrong with us.
Mm-hmm.
Really, the case is that things have happened to us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is that after trauma, it becomes very difficult to remember what's happened to us, right? So we live this kind of dysregulated, emotionally unstable life.
Right.
So I think it's always helpful if we can remember what's happened. And in this story, what happened was that William, the client, produced a timeline. And the picture on the cover is the very beginning of that timeline.
Right.
But he produced a timeline, and the rest of it is in the book and described.
Yes, I'll try to show the book. Let me see if I can do that while we talk.
But if we can draw a timeline, then I think we have better chance of keeping track of the things that have happened to us, right?
Okay. Right.
If we can remember that it's not that there's something wrong with us, it's that things have happened to us. Trauma makes it harder. Oh yeah, there it is. Trauma makes it harder to remember the things that have happened to us.
Yes. Well, have you ever read the book Keeping the Body Keeps Score or something like that? I think it's
absolutely. I mean, a very, very good book.
Yes, it really helped a lot. I always suggest that to clients because it's just amazing. And I've always used to say, but I didn't know what I was saying, to be honest, to be fair, before any psychology classes, I had no idea. But I was like, it's funny, you can forget things, but your body never forgets. And it shows up in little things that you do or don't do, and even, you can even far out say is, in addiction, that's another way that it shows up that you don't realize it until you get the help that you need. So I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, because in addiction, it can become simpler for the addict to start using whatever it is, food, drugs, drink, sex, whatever it is people are, use.
Right.
It can be easier to use on the feelings rather than to stay connected with the memory, with the longer story of what's happened. In fact, I would say that when you get, if an addict, they're clean and then they start to get the urge to relapse, that I think is often a sign that they're losing track of the things that happened to them. They're starting to get caught up in, they're going to go off and, drink or whatever it is they do. Right. But really, I think what's happened is that the emotional stability, the underpinning, has become, they're losing track of it. And that's why going to meetings every day and, sticking with readings and talking to sponsors, because I think good emotional health is a matter of practice, right? You build up good routines that look after you. You don't drink, whatever it is that you tend to use on, and you do it day by day. And the more you do that, the more the emotional stability goes with you.
Absolutely. Wow, great advice. So in your book, you focus on the recovery of creativity. What role does creativity play in healing from emotional wounds?
Well, I think let's broaden it out a bit. When we're talking about creativity, I think if we say that we're talking about our capacity to be spontaneous, to our capacity to not hide behind defenses all of the time, right? I think being able to reconnect with our creativity is where a lot of healing can happen. Is that the area of your question?
Yes, absolutely. And as an artist, I totally agree with that. That's powerful stuff, because I tell people all the time, you have to find what your gift is, because often it is the gift that will get you through whatever trauma you're experiencing. I mean, and they like, it's helped so many people. I really believe we are all given some kind of skill or talent that someone else doesn't have to as a tool, so to speak, to get us through whatever it is that happens in life. If we find out what it is, because most people never even found out what it is, but Like if I'm a writer, if I'm a singer, if I play the drums, if I'm a psychologist, if I was born to give advice and help people, those are things that somehow in your own thing, if you connect it, usually it helps you either get to the help you need or get to the place you need to be at, because you see, through your drawing, your writing, your singing, your soul is being lifted and inspired, and so it leads you to, like, the healing mode. I can't explain it, but it does lead you somewhere. And I'm a firm believer, if you have a talent, my God, please find it, because it will help you in some form.
No, I'm listening to what you're saying, because I felt that clearly in this story, William, the client, he
Yes.
recovers a certain amount of creativity. But I felt that for me, the writer, I was always, pushing at my own creativity, as in writing, and being a therapist and a writer, and how to take that further. So when I've been having conversations about the book, people are often interested to ask me about me, how I got into this work and so forth. Yeah. And typically as a therapist, I keep those kinds of bits of information very private. But I can see that actually that may be interfering with expressing myself.
Because I'm imagining, because here's the thing, and I was trained as a counselor that you never tell your story unless it's going to help move the client some way. Not move them like touch them, but help them move to healing in some way. That's the only time you share. So, and some people are off the fence about it. I just believe if your heart tells you to, then you should, because there's a reason why your heart's telling you to. That's just me. Now, everybody's not inclined like I am, so I'm not sure if that applies to everyone, but you know what I mean. There's a reason why you want to share, and you may not know it immediately. You may be thinking it's because you're letting them know. I don't know. You're not that identify. You may think it's for one reason, but the truth is, I believe if your soul, your spirit, everything about you said, for this case, I'm going to expose blah, 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 or whatever, however it is. I believe there is a reason to that. Now, perhaps that person sitting in front of you was on the verge of their last day, if you know what I mean. And I'm pushing the edge here, but you may, and I've had people tell me that before. Thank you so much for sharing that, because I thought I was the only one. You know what I'm saying? I thought that there couldn't have possibly been anyone like this, or, now and I feel like I'm inspired, or I'm motivated now, or whatever. Now, maybe that was just that case. I'm not saying that's every case, but if you're inspired to share, I see nothing wrong with it. Some people do, but I see nothing. I think you're being a farce. If it's called for at that moment and you don't do it, I believe someone's being a farce, and they may miss their blessing and you may miss yours too in the process.
Interesting. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I mean, the model, the kind of psychoanalytic schools that I trained in, the therapist doesn't say much about themselves, so that they are, the client can project ideas and we can work out who you think I am. But really, as I sit here now, having written this project, I think it would be interesting to find a way to be more open about, I guess, my own story, my own creativity. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
And I think you're right about following the creativity, because it's such a source of authentic you.
Yes. And it brings you, especially if you do it well. I knew a young man who was amazing drawer, artist, and he just thought he was just sketching, and I was like, I'm sorry, guy, but this is beyond sketching. This is like giving me Picasso at his finest. This is giving me Monet. He was so talented at 18 years old, and no one ever told him that, and no one ever had him follow. And I said, but he didn't tell me. I didn't know. I only used to see him sketching. And then one day I said to him, you're, do you know, like, this is a major gift? And he said, it makes me feel really good when I do it. I said, well, why don't you do it more? He said, I don't know. I'd just rather get into other stuff. And I was like, this is your gift. Like, do you know that this is your gift? Like, do you feel it internally? He said, yeah, every time I do it. I said, what happens? He said, I get calm. Everything done it. I don't even think about that. I said, why aren't you doing this more, bro? Like, why aren't you doing this, you young kid? Why aren't you doing this more? And he's like, it's funny because when I am sober, I am doing this more. And I said, well, duh. I mean, like, let's up the drawing game. It's clear and precise. But I said, well, I always did want to sell because I gave him some predictions that I had because I could see it. I could see that's something he wanted to do, but he didn't think he could because he lived in a small little town that doesn't inspire young people at all. And, I said, if you do this, you won't have to be ever back again. You know what I'm saying? You may have to do your maintenance work, make meetings and stuff like that, but this is your gift. This is what you were born to do. And this is what will help you get through all the stuff that you're going through. Just keep focused on this. And in the meantime, the therapy, you do the groups, and surround yourself around likeness. And eventually you're going to fade into who you were supposed to be. That's what's problem. Some people get confused. They don't know who they are. They don't know what their purpose is. And when you don't know your purpose on top of addiction and of all kinds of addictions, food, sex, whatever you could think of, then you really get lost in the matrix and you can never really get out because you didn't find your gift. I believe your gift is what will move you. If you do it right and be true to it, it can help you see other things and move to your healing spot if you use it as such.
Well, I think it certainly moves you on to the next chapter of what you're doing, doesn't it? Because often, when you talk about addiction, people go round and round these destructive cycles. They can't get into a new part of their story. They just get stuck there. And I think what you're saying is very interesting about paying attention to your gift and and what to do with it. In this case, I've put it to work in telling this story, and I'm hoping that, and signs are that, so something that happened in the writing of the book was that William took the pictures, he produced these 9 big pictures, and he took them to a printer's to have them printed. And when he went to collect them, the printer wanted to talk to him about the pictures. And she was like really fascinated with these pictures. I mean, they're not great works of art, but she'd picked up on the story, and she wanted to know what had happened and what had happened here and what had happened there. And she said that these pictures, they've really stayed with me. They caught my attention and my imagination. And then he came to me and he gave me a copy of the pictures and said, we've had our first review. And he said, this needs to be a book. People relate to this. I can see it. So my hope is that people are going to relate to this. We've put a lot of energy into really trying to, during the work, I came to understand how a grooming relationship works, right?
Yes, the grooming part.
To explain that, because when I was writing it, there were all of these cases in the UK with Savile and in the States. There were all these cases coming to light about grooming and these pernicious people, and people were saying, well, how come people keep in these relationships? How come they're old enough to stop this? And they didn't understand that if you've been groomed, you've had something done to you that makes you a guilty victim. And that's really, so I'm hoping that, victims in various places are going to find out about this book. They're going to read it and they're going to come back and say, thanks, because this actually really, what William describes in the book makes a lot of sense to what I went through. That would make me very happy.
Oh, it's definitely going to heal some people because, abuse is a prevalent, like 1 out of 5 people, probably less than that, to be honest, to be fair. I think a lot of people just don't mention it. But it's just like every other person at this point, pretty much it's going to be down to that. But a lot of people don't mention it, or they make us think it's trivial because an actual act wasn't done. Just the grooming part was done, or just this, so there's psychological stuff that also can happen. So they don't count that. Of course, the numbers will be lower, but it also applies to even domestic violence. you often see women who attract the mate, right? But if you look back into their childhood, what did they get? And we often attract whatever was going on in our childhood. So we may not know. Yeah, we may not know and go around saying, yeah, I'm going to pick this. No, we would never do that. But unfortunately, human beings will attract the same drama and trauma from their childhood unless they work through it.
I think that's exactly right. If you don't work through it, you repeat those patterns, those relationships, that destructiveness.
Yes, absolutely. Could you walk us through a common therapeutic process you use to help clients recover their creativity?
Well, I don't know, but I think if we just take the example in the book, and we say that maybe, because what I hope is that this is a kind of every person's story, right? I mean, the details of this really apply to one person who got caught up with one abusive priest at one point in time. But like you're saying, I think these abusive relationships follow a certain kind of pattern. So in terms of this, when we started working together, William had this kind of internalized prohibition. If he had any creative ideas, a kind of voice would shut them down and say, you can't do that. That's not for you. That's for other people, right? In fact, he called it an uber mallet. It was like this mallet that just bashed him on the head. And so when quite early on, we were wrestling with this. And one day he brought a Post-it note. And on the Post-it note, there was a tiny picture. And I was interested, and we talked a bit about what this picture was. It was a little triangle. In fact, it's on the cover there on the top, there's an emoji. And right next to the emoji is that little triangle. And it was that triangle figure was the beginning of this project. I was interested to know more about it, but it was very difficult for him to say more. And we had to be very patient and let things go their way, because, I think a lot of therapy, maybe most therapy, breaks off prematurely. For various reasons, people lose their confidence in the idea, or they lose a bit of energy or something like that. And they may have to meet another therapist in a few years' time and pick things up again. But on this occasion, we were able to find a way to keep talking to each other. Sometimes we might have he might not like things about me, but he didn't sack me. We kept on going, and gradually more pictures appeared. And what I was trying to talk to with him was the idea that, like I said earlier, it's not that there's something wrong with us; it's that things have happened to us. So the more we draw these pictures, so on the cover here, this is a kind of picture of what his life might have been like from year 0 to about 2 years old. When he's about 2 years old, there was a big event in the family. His mother fell ill. And as a result of that, he was left in his cot for long periods of time. So for too long. And everything really followed from that. But he didn't just turn up on day one with that picture. That took a long time to emerge, and it emerged bit by bit. But the thing we were following was trying to draw out the timeline of his life so that we could keep track of the events, so that we could understand the things that had gone wrong for him. So I would say that if I was trying to follow creativity in another project, then I think I would encourage someone to draw a timeline, because just getting straight on, this, because most people's lives follow certain patterns. You've got preschool, you've got, in the UK, primary school, then secondary school. And, you've got the picture of the family and the siblings. And whenever I draw these things out in my own mind at an assessment, I learned so much just by drawing out a family tree. So one sibling came along here, then there's a gap, 5 years. What was that about? You can start to piece things together. I would always encourage people to draw a timeline of their life, make it as full as they can. Understand when the breaks happen. Okay, I was a student and everything went well. Then I get to secondary school. I'm 14, hit puberty, get into this and that, and things start to fall apart. And you start to think, well, what was happening at home? You know, what was going on? 14. So when was that? We can date it because we know how old you are now. We can start to pick out, and then people say, well, actually, yeah, that was when my parents divorced, or, that's when such and such happened. So I think, long answer to your question, but I think a really good thing we can do to help ourselves is just build up more information of how we understand who we are and what's happened to us.
That's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. What are the practical tips for someone who feels like their trauma has stifled their creativity? Like, is there any other advice?
Well, I'd say be patient, right? I'd say go slowly, because I think a lot of problems become worse because we just get caught up in rushing. Okay. So I would say, if you're trying to fix a problem, if you're trying to understand a problem, try to go slowly, back the tempo off. Okay. Get yourself in a more patient, tolerant state of mind. Accept that you might need a bit of time to sort this out. Start looking for things that help you stabilize your emotional landscape.
Right.
Beyond that, I'd get some paper and a pencil. We don't need to spend money on this to get going on it.
No,
And
you don't.
I'd just start sketching out a timeline. Like I say, what happened when? Build this up. When did I start using drink and drugs? Was it because I got, caught up in some gang that took drugs and were into, I don't know, whatever they were into when I was 15, 16? Was it something that happened when I left the army? Was it? But let's get some dates on this.
Right. Very good.
Let's get some dates, because actually there's a story here. And when we're caught up in just traumatic repetitions, everything becomes crazy and no one can keep track of what happened. You talk to an addict and you can hear straight away their story. It's like incoherent. It's a mess. They went here, they lost their money. This happened, then they lost their keys. And, you think, okay, slow down. Let's so slow down. That would be my number one thing. And we don't need money. We don't need money. We can start with, like 12-step meetings, or CODA meetings, 12-step.
Yes. Those are great. Those are great.
They're great. They're online. They're free. They're all across the world. There is no reason not to go and try one. And I say to people, if you are going to try a meeting, just listen for the similarities. Don't look at the person and say, oh, but I don't know, he won't understand me. He's not my kind of person. Or
right.
Listen for the similarities.
Right. Don't go in judging. Yeah, for sure.
Don't go in judging. That's right. Slow down.
Absolutely. I find that's when I used to go just to see, because I do groups. I used to do groups. But I said, if we come in and don't judge and just listen, at least for the first session, then you can assess and say, oh, I do actually belong here. And then you can let your guard down, because you'll see we all have something in common, and we're all trying to work through this together. That's what I love about all those NAAA, all of those groups are so fantastic, because like you said, you don't need money. No. You don't need money. You need people who care. That's what you need.
Yeah.
You find that, they'll help lead you to your healing. So thank you.
And then I think all you need is to keep coming back, because you might say, okay, well, look, there was this guy there, Toby. I'm not sure if I liked him, but I'm going to go back. And what we'd find is that in these few days, your life has been a little less chaotic, right? And, just by coming back, you've been a bit more organized. I'm really always pay attention to the coincidence of, constructiveness or destructiveness, because these things tend to happen, in a context.
Yes, they do. Very important. Everything you're saying, very helpful too. I appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Because I cannot express enough how many people that are dealing with some kind of trauma, some kind of family drama, or something in the realms of what we're talking about. So they may not even see the actual cause, but if they listen, they will be able to and read the book. They'll be able to see, this is where I fit in. This is how I can help myself. It's like free information for me. That's why I love having, therapists, everybody on the show, because you always bring value to my audience. And if they're listening, which my audience is very good at listening and very in tune to, like, I think I need that. That's how we heal people together. You know what I'm saying? You have the talent, you have the skills and the science behind what you're saying. You know what I'm saying? The studies, you know what I'm saying? And we have people who are hurting and or know people who are hurting, and so we have to come up with solutions as human beings. And one of them to me has always been therapy. Therapy's always been massive. Arts has been massive, in healing. So
yes. And like I say, I think, maybe someone only does a certain amount of work with me and then they leave and they go somewhere else, but they might take something from it. They didn't like this guy, Toby, but they did like this thing. And it's a couple of years later, but they think they're going to go and have a chat about that with someone else. And that's no bad thing. I think that just giving people the chance to keep making connections with their own material, that's the thing. Because addiction disrupts us, and we start, instead of seeing the traumatic story, or even if we don't see it, we give ourselves a chance to not act out on the destructive thing. And that's trauma can be a kind of engine of further action, and addiction tends to separate us, doesn't it? It breaks people off. They go off on their own. They think they've found a solution on their own, and it's not really never the case.
No, not at all. How can individuals differentiate between trauma-induced blockage and natural creative slumps? Like, it's not working today, or versus, this trauma is blocking me.
Well, I think, like we were saying earlier, I think if we so I've got a question on my mind. Is this trauma, or is this some kind of slump? I don't know the answer to that, but what I'm going to do is treat the question very seriously. I'm going to slow down, and I'm going to just make sure I don't do anything that could be destructive while I slow down and give myself some time to see where I am and what I might want to do next. Okay. So by doing that, I don't make any further mistakes too quickly, because these things tend to knock on, don't they? So I slow down. I give myself the chance to investigate my question further. Something has interrupted my progress. Is it an ordinary slump, or is it something relating to a trauma that maybe I've never given myself the chance to have a better look at? I think as long as we keep the tempo backed off, as long as we try and keep the good things around us, maybe a meeting, maybe therapy, maybe a therapy group, maybe, I don't know what, a meditation class, or something that generally supports us in a way that is connecting and enriching and doesn't create destructiveness. We just give ourselves a bit more time, and then we can start to see, did I stop writing because I ran out of ideas and maybe this isn't my big project and I need to think about it again? Or is it that I maybe didn't investigate something enough and I need to actually dig into the problem in this bit of the story? Or is there a longer term pattern in my life where I get so far with everything and then I stop, which might indicate that this has its origin in an older trauma? But if we slow down, then I think we're giving ourselves the chance to have more time. Take it easy.
Wow.
Step back.
Wow. Yeah, slow down. Take it easy.
Maybe go to a meeting and have a share about it, and say, I've been on a really good path this last few months, but now it's becoming harder. I don't quite understand that. I haven't been drinking, but I thought it would be a good idea to come and share this here, because people would probably speak to you, wouldn't they? And they'd say, I'm glad you shared.
Yeah,
and then
they give the best.
Yeah, and then who knows how that affects you. So I think
Yeah.
slow down, see if you can connect with the good people around you, and then give yourself a bit more time to see, is this an old trauma wound, or
Mhm.
is this something that I can dig into a bit more now?
Exactly. Wow. And what are some of the misconceptions that people might have about trauma and recovery and creativity?
Well, I think from where I'm sitting,
Mm.
one of the things I see is that a lot of people get very familiar with their trauma,
Mhm.
but they tend, or they seem to live in a way that they don't really recover from it. So they
Mm.
know all about it, but it's
Mhm.
like they're always caught up in it. Now,
Right.
for me, that's not enough. Okay.
Right.
For
Right.
me, I want us to be able to know about our trauma, our past,
Mhm.
what happened to us. But I
Mhm.
also want us to be able to look after our emotional stability in the here and now. I have the
Mhm.
two projects. That's how I see it. Number
Mhm.
one, what happened to me? Where did I come from? What went wrong? What is it that happened? But
Right.
number two, what do I do today that looks after me today? I think we have to be looking at both of those things. If you just
Right.
look, if you just look at the trauma, there's a
Mhm.
lot of, I think there's a lot of evidence that people kind of go round the trauma. But I
Yes.
think if we
Yes.
can bring in a constructive approach to today, as well
Mhm.
as looking at the past, we improve today, which means that, you know, we're not going to be having to understand what went wrong today because we're working on today.
Exactly.
So that's the way I think about it.
Okay. Thank you. Wow. Um, in your work with survivors of trauma, like the client that you featured in your upcoming book, A Guilty Victim, what have you learned about the long-term emotional impact of childhood abuse, particularly when it comes to sorry about that, particularly when it comes to how victims perceive their own worth?
Well, that's very interesting. I think, and this is very much a part of the story in my book, A Guilty Victim.
Mhm.
The client in the story, who is called William in the book, he,
Mhm.
when I met him, could really have nothing for himself. And the only way he really kept himself alive was
Mhm.
having people around him that he could do good things for. And
Mm.
actually, he was quite a successful man,
Yeah.
but he was only successful
Mhm.
because it gave value to his family around him. And the reason
Okay.
he came to see me was that his youngest daughter was leaving home. And he knew that when she left home, he'd have one less person to do good things for, and he would be more
Mhm.
at risk. Okay.
Ah.
So I think childhood trauma can cast a long shadow over a
Mhm.
life. And
Mm.
that shadow can include nothing good can happen to me. But
Right.
I think it is possible to work on this. This book is proof that things can get better. And that
Mhm.
I'm interested in that. I'm not just interested in saying this is a story of a bad thing, right? Like
Right.
like a kind of horror story. I'm
Right.
interested in, yeah, that's not, I see, for me, what's interesting is the way we possess the capacity to recover
Mhm. Yes, yes, and the way you sit it and move it forward. Yeah.
and move it
Yes.
forward. You know,
Yeah.
I think, I mean, Carl Jung had an interest, I think I got this from Carl Jung,
Mhm.
but he had an idea about the soul, the
Yeah.
psyche,
Yeah.
as being like a boat, right? And if a boat is in a storm, the more you hang on to the ropes, the more perilous it is. If you
Mm.
let go of the ropes, the boat will self-right.
Mm.
Now that's a bit scary, but
Mhm.
it's trying to have the control often and trying to stick to things that aren't really working. You know, like you see
Exactly.
people, their businesses are failing, but they borrow more money, they do this, they do that. And the destruction is endless. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think we can recover, Tanya. I really do.
Look, I'm a living proof, and I believe many people are living proof. But also,
Me
I
too.
was just talking to someone just yesterday about some advice I used to give clients when they ask me like, "How do you deal with trauma and how do you heal from trauma?" And I said, "Let's put it like this, and especially family trauma, because they pass it around generation to generation and just keep going forever. Like, and I said, you have to look at it this way. For me, how I deal with my trauma, if it was me, is I pretend like I have my Louis Vuitton suitcases. Okay. I just say that because it's allegedly good luggage, right? And I take all my trauma and I sit it out on the table, just throw it out there. And then I separate the piles of which is which. And then I, identify what's what and where it goes and, what happened with it and process it. I'm able to sit in my trauma and drama. I'm able to see, you have to be able to sit in it. I use another word, but for this sake, I'll say a nice word.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to sit in it. And when I say sit in it, not sit and wallow in it, because I don't play violins. I don't do pity parties, I don't say, oh, this happened to me, so I'm going to do, I don't do that. So I sit in it, and then I decide, where is this going to go? And how did it play in my life? How did it affect my life? And how, moving forward, where can I put it? After I've done all that and did the therapy, did the groups, whatever it is I need, which I've done over 30 years, and I minored in psychology, I put them all in my little Louis Vuitton suitcases, and I store them away to be out only when needed. It's kind of how trauma is. It's something you have to work with and you have to deal with it. If you don't, you'll be walking around with a little plastic bag that gets holes in it and pieces drop out as you walk around, and then the bag goes away and it becomes a mess. So you need my simple way of telling. It was a young girl, and she liked fashion. So I use Louis Vuitton.
I get your story.
But that's kind of how trauma is.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I'd add to that is the more you can look after yourself today, the more you're going to look after that Louis Vuitton luggage.
Exactly. Right? And value it, because it has a place in your life. It has taught you lessons. There's lessons you've learned. There's things that made you grow as a human being if you're doing it right. And you can stop, especially if it's family trauma, you can stop it. You can build a whole new pattern for everybody. You can build a whole new story for the family instead of the same old story, and that's very important because we keep passing down generational trauma and drama from family to family because we don't deal with it.
Well, that, I meet a lot of people and I'll ask them at some point, about their families and let's say they have a son themselves, right? And I say to them that you solving this problem in your psyche, in your mind, in yourself, you're going to show your son, your daughter, you're going to show them how you deal with things, right? Exactly. And you're not going to pass this on to them like it was passed on to you. You're here to do this work now so that we don't pass this on to your children, so that they learn that you can heal from stuff, right? You don't have to go off and be an addict or kill yourself or wreck other people's lives, or you don't need to do that. You can deal with a problem.
Right. Absolutely. And we all have problems is another thing. And usually you're not alone in whatever you're going through. I guarantee you there's somebody on the face of this earth that has went through it or is going through it.
Well, that's why I say, if you go to a meeting, listen for the similarities, tune into that, because exactly like you say, you go to a meeting and it's always the case that someone will share something you needed to hear.
Right. And that's it. Sharing is caring.
And then we connect, because addiction, it separates us. Trauma and addiction, we become isolated. And when we're isolated, we use more. We don't look after ourselves. We don't look after other people. We pass these problems on then to the next family generation. And I'm here to try and, see if that can be changed, see if we can address our own issues like you're talking about, see if we can learn to live better with our own past trauma and history, and see if we can have children that grow up without being damaged by these things.
Yes. And that's what it's all about, is the future.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have kids, you have nieces and nephews, probably. You have somebody that's going to be leaving that legacy. And I've seen it over and over again, just even in little towns, especially. You say, wow, let me see, the daughter went through this, the grandmother went through this, the great grandmother went. I mean, I saw a family with like at least 8 generations of the grandmom offing themselves. 8 of them, like, what is going on with this family? And it wasn't until the granddaughter and speaking with them that we were able to uncover Ah, okay. So this is what was happening all this time. And that's why it was the women, not the men. Why do you think? So you have to, it's hard truth sometimes, but sometimes you have to sit. I used to tell people, sometimes you have to sit with the devil and wring his neck, literally.
What I'd add to that is sometimes you have to sit with him for a long time, because I think, let's say you go through childhood trauma, your father dies, you're too young, it's terrible pressure in the family. Now, when you're a small boy, that's one kind of thing. And it has an effect on, your 7 to 13 to 13 to 18. But when you're 60, right, then you can see the whole thing more clearly. So the more we can live and find ways to pursue our own lives healthily, the richer this becomes.
Yes, exactly. Definitely.
And you were saying about, you might not have family to connect with, and you might not, but like we're saying, you can go to a meeting, or you might be in a you might know musicians, or you might like going to galleries or something. Then, there are opportunities to contribute to people. I was once on a subway coming back from my therapy, and a woman was standing by the edge of the subway, and I thought, I'm going to go and talk to her. So I went and talked to her. The train came in. We get on the train. We went the same journey. And when we got off the train at the other end, she said to me, if you hadn't talked to me, I was going to jump in front of that train.
Look at that. See what I'm saying? Following your instinct.
You followed your instinct. You connect with someone. Amazing things happen when we let them.
Absolutely. And I'm a firm believer. If your gut says do it, go for it. Because it's usually never lies. It's like this gift that God gave us of the universe. If you don't believe in God, because I know people have been traumatized by church. So I understand and respect that. But whoever made this beautiful, fabulous body of ours and mind knew everything that we would need. And one of them is discernment and this gut feeling. And when you follow it, you can actually save and change lives, or your own, quite often. You know what I'm saying? So I tell people, follow your gut. And I know if you've been in addiction, if you've been in trauma, sometimes it's hard to follow that because you've been trained to follow something else. So, or to be silent, not speak, not talk about it. Oh no, that's family taboo. I get that, but you have to retrain that brain to say, my instinct tells me I don't feel like going to this event, and don't go. Or it says, I need to go to this event. And then you go and you meet people that you needed to contact or connect with. You know what I'm saying?
Look at this conversation. We didn't know each other. We're connecting. We're having a conversation. Someone might hear this and think that there's some interesting ideas I got out of that.
Yes, absolutely. I'm sure someone will connect with this. I'm sure. That's why I was like, oh, this is perfect guest. So I'm almost done because I know your time is very valuable. Yes, I know we're getting close to that time. Russia. You emphasize that we are often trapped in our situations, not because of something is wrong with us, but because things that have happened to us. Can you elaborate on how this understanding can shift the way we approach mental health and healing and trauma?
Well, I think that's absolutely right. And I think what happens is that you'd think we would be able to keep track of what's happened to us. But when trauma happens, sometimes it can be so powerful and maybe not so obvious to other people, but so powerful that we get disrupted and we lose sight. So I think what we know is something happened here, and after it happened, it turned out I became an addict who used drugs, right? And I've never linked this thing happening with my addictive pathway and journey and so on. So in my work, that's right. I'm very interested in the idea that it's not that there's something wrong with us. I mean, I meet a lot of people and they will say there's something wrong with them. And I tend to think, hold on a moment. I imagine what you mean is things have happened to you, which have deregulated you, confused you, and out of which you've ended up living a destructive kind of life. Okay.
Mm.
But what we're trying to do is find a way of working together, get past any hesitations and so forth, so that this can be a relationship that might have some confidence in it, which might mean it's possible to investigate the things a bit more. And we can start to understand and make links between what happened, in the past and how I've become the person I am now. Right. And that's my thing, really, working out what happened in these traumatic moments and learning how to look after ourselves better today. And I'm confident that the more we can do both, the more we can live better today, which means tomorrow is going to be easier with a bit of luck. And the more we can understand that it's not there's something wrong with us, but things happen to us that we're still recovering from. Because trauma, tragedy, trauma, these things don't just happen, on, 17th of March. They cross the shadow.
Exactly. It's like,
yeah,
it's an ebb flow. It's a flow. It just today up, tomorrow down. It's like same as grief. It doesn't just, I have grief for 5 minutes and that's it, it's gone. No, it could be today.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think with bereavement, people get very confused. They kind of think, well, aren't you over that by now? I mean, that happened last year.
I hate that.
Bereavement time is totally different. Absolutely. You're 5 years down the line, you suddenly get reminded of someone you lost and you think, you realize they're as fresh in your mind as they ever were. It's entirely artificial to think that someone dies and we're kind of over it.
Right. Absolutely. Wow. With over 25 years of extensive experience in psychotherapy and trauma recovery, what do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of emotional instability or mental health struggles? And how can we begin to address these misconceptions in society?
Okay, well, I'll give you. I'd guess that one of the problems is that we tend to overdiagnose problems. So let's say you meet someone who's chaotic and they're all over the place and they've got this long story of disruption. And it can be very easy to start saying, they're ADHD, they're autistic, they're on some kind of divergent pathway or something like that. And by doing that and getting caught up in that diagnostic language, we can just overlook the fact that ordinary things happen to this person that were too much for them to deal with, and they haven't been able to process them. And this has confused them and deregulated them, and they've remained in a deregulated pattern. But if you stop them somehow together in the work, if you can both find a way to stop and say, I think something's happened to you that maybe we haven't quite caught up with, then we can simplify this. We can take away the sort of the stigma, and we can turn things into more ordinary and recognizable human stories. And we stop becoming like, mental health patients and just become more like people who suffer various things, but who recover.
Right. Very fantastic answer. Wow. Thank you. And so my last, I know you've got a time schedule here. I'm so sorry, but that's fantastic answer. My last question for you is what advice do you have for those who may not have experienced trauma directly, but are still struggling with their emotional well-being or their creative expression?
I'd say slow down. Okay. Take your time. Don't rush into things. Just give yourself a chance to follow this impulse that you want to explore things a bit, right? Give yourself some chance, because life's going to be a bit hectic. Come off the social media for a moment, because that uses up a lot of our time, and it often not in a very productive way. But give yourself time to slow down and get a bit further into your question.
Thank you.
You might not be able to sort it all out in one go. You might need to speak to many different people. It might be that question of yours becomes a kind of destiny. Take your time.
destiny. I like that, a kind of destiny. Well, thank you so much, Toby. I appreciate you taking the time to come and share with us. And guys, go out and get the book, A Guilty Victim. Unusual in that a survivor is actually sharing, and that's a case study is usually unusual, with
Yes.
permission, of course. So
Yes.
it's very important you get this book. I believe it will move lots of people forward. Even if you haven't experienced trauma, I'm sure you know someone who has. So please, if you can, it's on Amazon UK and I think US, all Amazons, right? You can get
I
it,
guess
right?
so. And please, if you like it, please do leave a review, because other people, that makes a difference to people. I hope
Yes,
I hope people like the book. I hope they relate to it. I hope they feel that it echoes something of a story of a victim. I'd be
yes.
interested to hear what people make of it. Thank you,
Yeah,
Tanya.
Hi, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And I'm going to just, I guess I'm going to close out and I appreciate you. I will be sending you copies of this. This is fabulous. And here we go. So I'm going to end. Just give me one moment. Hang out for 1 second. And if you have to leave, I'll email you.
Before you end, I was just going to say, can you put maybe the link to my website in some of the footnotes of this, just so people know?
Yeah. What is the W? Oh gosh, I forgot. I can't do it there. Oh, I'll have to do it in the banner. Okay, I got it. Go ahead. It's
www.tobyingham.com.
.com. Got it. There you go. Okay, go ahead. There you go. There you go, guys. So that's if you need to reach them, and also my viewers know that they can always reach out to me. I'm always going to give them resources. So make sure you check out the website, guys. If you can, please check out the book, and yeah, we'll have to see you next week. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Toby. Let me just say goodbye to everybody one more time. Bye, all. I will see you soon.